There we go. And as you look at this, I just want you to ask yourself one simple question. Now, one simple question I'd like you to ask yourself is, do you actually know what's going on in terms of your organization in terms of risk? Risk governance is the answer to that question. And it's also the question of, do you know when it's time to freak out? Really, that's the big question. Do you actually know when it's time to go, ah, and just panic? You know, it's amazing. Panic actually gets a bad name, and yet panic is what keeps us alive. The kind of amazing thing for me is that when it comes to, well, just full-fledged, oh my gosh, the world's caving in around me, people having that kind of reaction, some people, and you know these folks, they do it far too soon. They're in your office going, there's a disaster, it's awful, and they're just freaking out on you. And you've still got other people on the flip side of the coin who never tell you anything. You come up to them and go, did you know the building is burning? Oh, yeah, I didn't think it was that big a deal. Ah! Risk governance is the fine art of actually establishing, here's when I want you to be calm, here's when I want you not to be calm. Here's when I want you to have a game plan, and here's what we really don't care about. It's amazing how few organizations ever actually take the time to try and govern their risks. And that's where we're going today. This is what we're going to talk about. Now, one key to all of this, and one thing that's really important to recognize is this piece of it, and that is you have to do some degree, some modicum of risk management planning. You actually have to do some degree of risk management planning. You have to do it before you do identification, qualification, quantification, response development. Before you do all of the common critical steps of risk management, if you don't have a game plan in place, if you don't have some form of risk governance, all the rest of that becomes moot. Now, you might think this is a weirdo graphic for me to choose here to actually share with you. It is. But let me explain. You see what these are, those little images? They're what I like to call loose cannons. Now, some of you actually have loose cannons in your organization, and you know who these people are. And the real kicker is that some of these people actually just take it upon themselves to basically go, don't worry, I can handle it. Now, who is in charge in your organization? Is it your boss? Is the boss really the one who pushes back and says, no, that's something we shouldn't be doing? Is it higher than that? Is it the CEO? Is it the organizational objective that's driving organizational behavior? All too often, we don't have anyone in charge, particularly when it comes to risk. You know, there's a simple question driving down the highway. Driving down the highway. Now, I am going to actually use some of the functions of Citrix Online, and I'm going to ask you to do me a favor, and that is, you've got the ability to raise your hand, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to ask you a simple question, and that is, would any of you be willing to drive 95 miles an hour in a 65-mile-an-hour zone? Would you be willing to drive 95 miles an hour in a 65-mile-an-hour zone? If so, would you raise your hand, please? Would you go ahead and raise your hand? Oh. Now, I want to pick on a couple of you, and specifically, I want to pick on Kate. Kate, you identified yourself as a driving fool. You said, I am just ready to go. I am 95 miles an hour. I am there. And just so you know, Kate, you're not alone in this. Philip also agreed with you. He said, hey, I'm willing to go 95 miles an hour. Philip said, 95 miles an hour, I am there. Now, Philip said 95, he's willing to do that. Kate said 95. Most of you said, bag that. That's insane. it's noteworthy because the reason Kate and Philip become noteworthy is that when it comes to Kate and Philip, those two individuals, they are willing to buck society. Society says 65 miles an hour is the speed limit. Now, and it's kind of interesting. We also have kind of this quiet social contract. 67 miles an hour, there are very few places in the United States of America, which is what I'm using as my frame of reference, that you would get pulled over and arrested for doing 67 in a 65. That's very unlikely unless you're in the middle of a speed trap. But the reality is, most of us, and most of us are kind of like laid out in there, saying that, you know what, I am not willing to go down that road. I am just not willing to go 95 miles an hour. Why? Because you recognize there's a social contract. We've all seen those people driving 95 past us as we're driving along at 65 miles an hour. We've seen Kate. We've seen Philip. And the interesting thing is we see them go flying by and go, whoa, they're insane. Now, I'm going to have to shut down my webcam because it's telling me things are running a little slow on my end, so I'm just going to put that down for a minute. But what I want to emphasize here and what I want to stress is that Kate and Philip are willing to do that extra kind of mile an hour because, well, frankly, they're loose cannons. And the real challenge here when it comes to those loose cannons is that they have the potential to ruin risk governance. Now, I have to give the states, the government, credit where it's due. That's the one I want you to think about. I want you to think about that, and I want you to think about just the one that is taking up most of your effort these days. Got that one in mind? Great. Now, what would it take to shut it down? There's a tough question. What would it take to actually close that project down? Now, think about that. If you want to pop an answer into the question box, you're perfectly welcome to. Because think about what it would actually take to close it down. Closing down projects, it's not something most organizations do well. In fact, most organizations, when they have that catastrophic moment, when they have that, well, it's a bad project, somebody in the organization goes, wait, we can save this. We can put lipstick on this pig. We can salvage this. And that is inherently problematic. It is. It's inherently problematic. It creates a host of problems. And the reason being is because at some point or another, we need to be like one of my old clients, one of the big telecoms, actually had the most brilliant way of dealing with risk governance when it comes to that particular aspect of it, going beyond tolerances. That company actually had the most beautiful project charters ever written. They were gorgeous. They looked like your project charters. The only difference was that on their project charters, they had a box down at the bottom that you don't have. The box they had down at the bottom said these magic words. It said, kill criteria. Under the following conditions, this project will be sent to management for review for termination. Whoa! Think about that. Here's a beautiful new project, and by the way, here's how you can kill it. Wow, is that scary? Here's how you can shut it down. Now, tragically, most organizations never have that conversation. In order to have that conversation, we need all of these things. We need this long litany of stuff, as it were. We need to have all this stuff in place. We need to have clear definitions. We need tolerances, we need branding, and we need follow-through. And we're going to talk about how you can take on building each and every one of those elements, how you can make sure that each one of those happens, how you can be responsible for making those happen. And we'll start here with risk definitions. This is the actual definition from the Project Management Institute of what a risk event is. Take a look at that. Notice a positive or negative influence on our outcomes. Most people tend to think of risk exclusively as threat. PMI tends to think of it as threat and opportunity. They think of it both ways. So they've got a slightly different perspective on this. Some people simply describe risk as the evil that may happen, that may befall us. Other people use the term challenges. Some people use the term problems. One woman I used to work with, Marcia Taylor, she used to use the term concerns. I always loved that, concerns. She'd always say, oh, we don't have risks, we don't have problems, we have concerns. Now, do I care what your definitions are? Well, yes. They should be compliant with what the world thinks the definition of risk is. But frankly, when it comes to all of this, when it comes to the challenges we face, you need to be the person who's defining risk. You need to be Noah Webster. Now, for those of you who don't know anything about Noah Webster, he's a little-known figure in American history, but he wrote something that everybody is relatively familiar with in the States. It's the American Collegiate Dictionary, Webster's Collegiate Dictionary. Now, Webster's, kind of interesting in that it's an American dictionary. And the reason Noah Webster wrote a dictionary was because he despised the British. Now, think about hating a culture so much, you would actually write a dictionary. That was Noah Webster. And the interesting thing is, he changed American culture forever. You know, we don't spell favor the same way the Brits do. We don't spell them the same way as our neighbors, the Canadians. And it's notable in that definitions that Noah Webster came up with, the spellings, all that stuff created a culture. Now, most organizations don't have a risk lexicon. They don't have the whole dictionary, if you will, of risk management. This is a wonderful opportunity for you. It is, seriously. This is a great opportunity for you. Why? Because you have the ability, you have the opportunity here to be Noah Webster, to change culture, to change the way your organization does business in terms of risk. The beauty of this is if somebody argues with you about whether something's a risk or not, you're the one who gets to say, well, let me look at our organization's definitions of risk. Oh, what do you know? I'm right. Ha, sweet. So we actually have the ability to have an influence on this stuff. The key is to make sure that as you're writing the dictionary of terms, you need to actually make sure that you believe the dictionary of terms. Don't go writing stuff before you actually own it. Issue. Issues and risks are radically different. PMI, the Project Management Institute, makes that crystal clear. Risks are future phenomena which have not yet occurred. Issues are risks realized. Threat. Threats are evil risks. Opportunities are positive risks. Now, symptoms and triggers. I love using those two because a lot of people use those two terms synonymously, and frankly, they're not. They are not synonymous terms. Now, think about this. The trigger is the point at which we are about to breach a threshold, the point at which we are about to see a risk come into the danger zone or about to have a risk realized. The trigger is the physical sign that that's about to happen. Symptoms. Now, symptoms of a heart attack. I always use that as a rather morbid example, but a heart attack. Think about that. Numbness down the left arm, shortness of breath, pressure on the chest, a pain extending up into your neck and shoulder. Yeah, those are the symptoms of a heart attack. Now, don't confuse those with triggers. Our triggers may manifest themselves long before any of those symptoms ever do. Trigger is the point at which we're going to take action. And hopefully it's long before we ever get to the point where we've got numbness down the left arm. The trigger might be your cholesterol goes over 210. The trigger might be your high blood pressure exceeds 140 over 90. The trigger might be that you can't walk 2 miles without sitting down. Those would be triggers, and notice that the triggers are the physical manifestations ideally long before we ever have the actual symptoms that a risk is coming upon us, that a risk is actually coming to pass. But if you write the dictionary, you've got to become l'Académie Française. Now, for those of you who don't know what l'Académie Française is, they're the French language police. If you've ever dealt with the fun folks over in France, it's kind of interesting because in Canada, a lot of people tend to speak franglais, half French, half English. And in France, they don't. The reason? Because in France, they have l'Académie Française actually enforcing French language. English words often try to infuse themselves into foreign languages. For example, for a while in France, a term that came along was computer. Just computer with a French accent. Yeah. But it was interesting, the French language police said computer is an American term. We don't want to use it. We need a better term. We need a French term. And they came up with ordinateur. Now what's notable about that is they enforce it. If you're advertising in France and you're advertising in French and you use some of those franglais kind of words, the French language police are after you. Now, when it comes to your risk dictionary, who's the enforcer? Who's that little cop down in the corner? That would be you. That's right, it's you. You're the one who has to enforce this stuff, which means that when somebody uses issue and they mean risk, you need to be the one who steps in and clarifies and says those simple words. You know, I understand where you're coming from with the whole, why you wanted to use the word issue. But just so you know, issues are when they actually have already hit us. Risks are still waiting in the wings. They're still in the offing. And so we need to be the ones who are ensuring that we have a common understanding and that others around us are using them well. Tolerance. Now, there are three terms I want to toss out at you. Tolerance, threshold, and trigger. Tolerances are the wall. Now, here's a simple question for you. I want you to look at whatever room you're in right now. I want you to look at the wall. Just stare at it for a moment. Not too challenging, okay? We're all staring at the wall. Could you go through that wall? And the short answer should be no. Not if you're looking at a real wall. So you're like, Carl, I'm in a cube. I can take that sucker down. No problem. Well, fine. But for most of us, the wall is something you cannot go through. Tolerances are what we should express to our team members as the point beyond which we simply can't go. These are the true lines in the sand. Now, what's notable about this is organizations violate this all the time. And it's a real tragedy. They'll say, the project's got a budget of $2 million, with its contingencies, with everything else, with all that we could stand, the budget better never go over $2.5 million or heads will roll. Well, fine. But sadly, a lot of organizations will hit that $2.5 million and go, oh, but we're so close. It's only another $250,000. Let's just go ahead and go through the wall. As soon as you do that once, you violate tolerance. And as soon as you're violating tolerance, people no longer believe where the wall is. And that means they're going to keep running into it. And that's a bad, bad behavior. You know, I don't know if any of you have really, really smart pets, but it's kind of interesting. We have non-smart pets in my house, and it's been kind of interesting. We have a little cat door that leads into our basement, and it's to keep the cats so that they can get away from the dog. And it's fine, but it's interesting because it's one of those little doors that goes and just flaps back and forth. Now, what's notable about that is the cat has learned that it can escape the dog by darting through that door. The dog has not realized that it's a tolerance, and the dog will dart after the cat and boom, get half its nose through the door, and that's it. That's as far as it can go. And it's kind of interesting because when we first got the dog, it would try desperately to get through that little hole. And over time, as it keeps whacking its nose and keeps whacking its head, eventually, do you know what's starting to happen now? Now, our puppy's only about a year old now, but it's kind of interesting. She runs up to the door and stops. Now, it's exactly the kind of behaviors we're trying to train into, not our pets, but our organization. We want our team members to know there are certain points when they get near them, for crying out loud, stop. And we need to communicate them out to the team members by saying, you know, you shouldn't stop when your head whacks the door. You should be stopping instead when you actually are getting close to the door. Not only that, when you get close to the door, you should call me and let me know, hey, I'm getting real close to that door. I'm about to whack myself again. The beauty of actually knowing what the tolerances are is that eventually you get behaviors that are consistent. Now, I guarantee you that our two 95-mile-an-hour folks, I promise you that if they got pulled over not once but twice in the same week for speeding, it would lower their tolerance for speeding. It really genuinely would. It would lower it significantly. The reason? Because they'd start to realize they're running into the door. They're running into the tolerance. Society will not accept 95 miles an hour in a 65-mile-an-hour zone. And if they were in the state of Virginia, kind of interesting living near Virginia. I don't live in Virginia, but I live near Virginia. And it's interesting because in Virginia, 85 miles an hour is the tolerance. Now, 85 miles an hour. If you were going 85 miles an hour anywhere in the state of Virginia, anywhere, doesn't matter if it's posted 70, if it's posted 65, if it's posted 45-mile-an-hour speed limit. What's notable about it is, in Virginia, if you're going 85 or higher, you will be arrested, cuffed, and taken in for reckless driving. Now notice, it's no longer about speeding. It's a completely different offense. We're talking about handcuffs and fingerprints. Why? Because in Virginia they have established their tolerance. What's notable about that is it changes behavior. You'll see people speed in Virginia, but seeing somebody go over 85 miles an hour, frankly, I've never seen it. Why? Because they communicate real clearly, this is our tolerance. They communicate that out, and they communicate it out through the organization. Now, it should be the big risk areas that we're actually setting tolerances on. What are the things we always freak out about? And specifically, it's the answer to this first question. What does your management always carp on? I said harps on, but carp on is the same thing. What do they always complain about? What do they always, you know, your projects can't do this. Now, one of my clients is a big financial institution. What do they always harp on? Regulatory. Did they ever shut down an effort because of regulatory problems? Yes. Are jobs at risk for failure to properly address regulation? Yes. Does everybody in the organization recognize that regulatory compliance is a key management concern? Yes. It's part of the gospel. Now, the interesting thing is, as a result, that becomes a common thread for risk. And they're always asking the question, can we still be regulatorily compliant and do what it is we're proposing to do? By simply flagging that as a line that won't be crossed, everybody knows about it, and nobody plays loose cannon. Nobody is our cowboy. Nobody's out there trying to take on the organization. Well, it might be a little bit non-compliant, but we can get by with that. No. In that organization, the culture is crystal clear. You just don't do it. And that is why we need to be the ones who flag these for the common risk areas. Now think about this. Schedule. For your big project, I told you to put that big project you're working on right now in your head. I want you to think back to that project. and I want to ask a simple question. How late can you be? Now, think about that. How late can you be? Now, how late could you be? That's an interesting question. How late could you be? And the reason I'm asking how late you could be, because I'm going to now ask you the very simple question. We've got, 7,500 folks on the call, and I just want to ask for a raising of hands, if you would, if you can't be so much as a day late on the big project you're working on. I'd like you to just raise your hand if you can't be so much as a single day late. If you're a day late, it's all going to hit the fan. The entire world is going to come caving in around you. Just go ahead and raise your hand if you would, and I'm just looking down the laundry list of attendees here. April said, one day late, she's toast. One single day late, and she's history. Philip, our speeder, he's also going to be in deep, deep trouble if he's so much as a single day late. Now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take, Signe also was there, Susan was there, Tom was there. Can't be a single day late. Now, it's interesting because it makes a big deal. And one of the folks wrote into the question interface that we have to be plus or minus 10%. So one day might push us over depending upon where we are in the project. Well, yes, but. This goes to an understanding of just the simple answer to this question. Team members need to know exactly where are we in terms of how late we can stand. Now I'm going to put your hands down and I'm going to ask you a different question. I'd like to see a different subset of people replying. And specifically what I want to ask is, could your project, could it stand being more than a month late? The big project you were thinking of, could you stand being more than a month late? And if yes, raise your hand.
Or you can also type it into the answer panel, the question answer panel.
Okay, yeah, and they are.
Yeah.
James said he could stand being more than a month late. David says it. Kate, our other speeder, says it. Bert and Brenda said it. Now, I love these folks, and the reason I love these folks is because they actually know that their line is in a completely different place than the first group's line. But the question then becomes these questions. Who drew the line? And for the folks who are more than a month out, I love doing this in a live class because I always ask that one simple question. You know, frankly, we don't really have a deadline. They've told us just to get this done whenever. And I just weep when I hear that because, you know, it's one of those things where what's the tolerance? How far can you go? And in class I'll often go, could you be 3 months late, 6 months late, a year late? And eventually all the hands come down. But the ideal, the best case scenario is where you know the answer to these questions before the project gets going. Because if you actually know this stuff before the project ever gets going, you have the ability to, and I love the word, govern. You actually have the ability to govern. You have the ability to actually control the project. Now, somebody said, we try to stay on time to set expectations. Yes, but one of the software firms that I worked with for a number of years, kind of compelling on their project when it came to the triple constraint of time, cost, requirements, the one that never moved was time. That was their gospel. You did not come in late. End of story. And that's, you know, the person who said here, Jeff said, we pick quarterly releases just to be structured. We try to stay on time. If something runs over, it moves into the next release. Hallelujah. As long as we know where the date is, as long as we know where this stuff is happening, we're in much better shape. We really genuinely are. And this is the big challenge. If no one's really watching the clock, is it late? If you know where the wall is, then you can start arguing with team members, or at least having the conversation with team members. Hey, just out of curiosity, is there anything that you're doing right now that could drive us toward the wall, that could drive us toward the tolerance? And if we know that, we're actually in much better shape. Now, some of you who speak PMBOK, the Guide to the Project Management Body of Knowledge, one of the interesting things is, and by the way, just so you know, here's my little claim to fame. In addition to writing 7 books on project management, I'm one of the authors of the PMBOK, the 4th edition. When they wrote the 4th edition, I was the lead chapter author for Chapter 11, Risk Management. And interesting, in PMBOK 5th edition, they actually dropped these 2 terms in here, risk attitude and risk appetites. The best organizations are where we actually have aligned our organization's appetites with the team members' attitudes. Attitudes is what we act on. You know, some of you have personal tolerances. When I said 95 miles an hour, there are some people in this group that wouldn't go over 70 miles an hour. And, you know, 8, you're great. Well, that means you can go another 4 miles an hour over the speed limit, and you'll be fine in the 65-mile-an-hour zone. But even if that is the cultural appetite for risk, you have a different risk attitude. Now, attitude is what we act on, what we decide on. It's a personal choice. Appetites are the drivers, and organizational appetites should ultimately align with the attitudes of the personnel who are implementing risk. This is why we actually need to find out from folks what's their risk attitude. Now, your risk attitudes are not the same as your organizational risk tolerances, but when you can get them together, when you get them aligned, you actually have a risk brand. Now, you might wonder why I have the Coca-Cola brand logo up here. And that's because Coke is it. Coca-Cola is the single most recognizable brand on the planet. If you saw this written in a Cyrillic alphabet, you'd still know it was the Coke logo. If you saw it written in Mandarin, you'd still know it was the Coke logo. Why? Because it's Coke. Because it's the same. It's the same logo that they've had since the late 1800s. It's been around forever. And it represents consistency, constancy. It's what we are. Now, some of you have worked for bosses who are, well, dare I say, intolerant. They don't tolerate a lot of crap. They don't put up with a lot of stuff. They basically push back and push back hard. What's compelling about that is, over time, if you have a boss like that, and I've actually worked for one, the nicest thing about working for him was consistency. Consistency. And the beauty of it is his consistency led to, and this actually goes to the question that was just raised in the questions box. The question was raised, can I define risk attitudes again? Absolutely. It is those things that we actually act on personally based on our belief system on risk. Now, every one of us has a risk attitude. My risk attitude is I won't drive over 72 miles an hour in a 65-mile-an-hour zone. It's not the same as Phillips, who's willing to do 95. Now, that difference in attitude means that I am within organizational risk tolerance, and I am an adherent to the brand. In the state of Virginia, I'm going to be safe if I go down there driving. Philip is what we like to refer to as bear meat. Yeah, he's just basically, he's got a different risk attitude, and so he's not going to work well within that organization. He's not going to be reinforcing Virginia's brand unless, by the act of him violating their tolerances, his attitude gets him in trouble. But the real key is when you have a perfect alignment of attitude and tolerance, what you wind up with is a solid risk brand. You wind up with, in that organization where I was working for that guy who was demanding and said, you never go past here, you'll always do it this way, those kinds of things actually made it easy for people to predict behaviors within the organization. And we became Coca-Cola. We became consistent. We became effective at actually doing things the same way over and over and over again. And that actually works to our advantage. It worked big time to our advantage because we had a consistent understanding of where we were going. Now, I do have a question I'd like to ask, and this is the hand-raising thing again. I didn't ask this earlier, and I'm going to get back in there. I want to let me move my questions over there, put that there. Okay, what I want to do is I want to ask the question, have any of you, and if you just raise your hand, have any of you been in one of my workshops online or in person before? Have any of you ever attended one of my workshops before? I'm just hoping there's one of you. That's all I really need to make a point. Sadly, it looks like no. This is a first time for everything. I want to go ahead and give you a heads up then. I'm going to go ahead and give you a warning, kind of a flash, and that is, it's the same. The gospel I preach every single time I teach, it's the same. It looks very, very similar. All the way up and down the line, it's the same. Now, Pamela, oh, bless you, a name I actually recognize. Pamela Butler's actually been in my workshops before, and I would lay odds. Oh, and I've got a couple people who have written down there. Annette says she has, James has. And let me just ask you, and if you'd write the answer in the question and answer interface, is this kind of the way I always do workshops? Does this sound eerily familiar to you? The style, the way in which I practice it, the gospel I'm preaching? Is it? Yeah, and Annette said yes. and it's true. It's kind of creepy that way, but I am that guy. This is the same thing that I do. The reason? Because it allows people to know what to expect. If we do this on risk, if we do it when we're talking about our enforcement, and Pamela said, yeah, you have a unique style. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, Pamela. But anyhow, the point actually is that you're getting what you expect. And the beauty of an effective risk brand is it's why people hire your organizations. It's why people hire Whizlabs, because they know exactly what they're going to get. They get these things as part and parcel of what happens. They get consistency. They know you're not going to take too big a chances, and that's the whole enforcement piece. And people know exactly what to expect. If you have a really effective risk brand, they'll be able to say, you know, I love working with AJ because every time AJ works with us, you know, something beautiful happens. He never makes us this. He always makes us that. She always does this. She never does that. Why? Because they actually are out there selling your brand because they know there's a brand to sell. You look the same every single time. And in case you're wondering what the little metaphor is here with my cartoon character, and that is, I'm behind every bush. Da-da-da. Yeah, and that's exactly it. It's a matter of you want to be everywhere. You want people, when they think of certain aspects of risk branding, they want to be thinking about you. Because it is. It's all about you. Your risk brand is uniquely yours. The more you can do to infuse it into an organization, it's not just a matter of, oh, this is the way that organization does business. It's a matter of, oh, you know, they've got kind of that Alex flavor to them. They've got kind of that Pamela flavor to them. They've got kind of that Aaron flavor to them. And the fact that they do that, the fact that they actually have kind of a consistency that's embedded in it, that works in our favor big time because it opens the door for us to have a more intelligent risk conversation. It genuinely does. It makes it that much easier. Now, how can you go about branding yourself? For one, start writing articles. You really should. Carl, I don't have any place to publish an article, and I'm not that good a writer. I don't care. You write enough emails. Next time somebody asks you to respond to a complex question, rather than just replying in an email, say, you know what, I'll email you my response tomorrow, but I was in the midst of writing an article about this. Now, modern blog posts are 800 to 1,200 words. You write emails that are longer than that. So rather than writing it in an email, frame it as an article, save it in Word, and say, dear client, dear contact, dear internal person, here are my cogent thoughts on this in an article I was writing for a blog. Now, if it never gets posted to a blog, I don't care. Why? Because now you've got an article that actually represents something concrete as one brick in your brand. One little brick in your brand. A lot of construction organizations open every single meeting with a safety minute. Let me suggest to you, open up every meeting with a risk minute. What should we be worried about? If you're looking for ways to brand, use little phrases, little catchphrases. The 5 P's of project management. Proper planning precludes poor performance. Those are the 5 P's. Now, and pick your letters. Use the letters that are the abbreviation for your name. I used one when I was actually doing a class at Marriott Corporation, and I used Join With Me, JWM, Join With Me. And I used that as the header for a lot of things that I was preaching in terms of risk. What was interesting was somebody finally caught on, Join With Me, J.W. Marriott, the founder of the Marriott Corporation. And I got an email from him a couple of weeks later, said, I want you to know how much I hate you, Carl. I said, but why? They said, because I can't get that out of my head. Every time I walk past our corporate logo, JWM, all I can think of is you going, join with me. Be prepared to speak the gospel of whatever it is you're preaching, be it risk management, be it project management. You better be current with the current literature, the current information, and when you're using your brand, you want to make sure that everybody uses it. Kleenex and Band-Aid are brand names. They have become so ubiquitous and so consistently used that anytime you talk about facial tissue, you don't call it facial tissue. You call it Kleenex. That makes a huge difference. We follow through by reinforcing our brand by making it part of the everyday. Most cups now have that little logo on the top. The beverage you're about to enjoy is hot. Why? Because it was somebody's risk. And you can follow through by letting people know up front. There will be clairvoyant moments. Requirements will change. I know that's going to happen. How do I know? Because I'm flippin' clairvoyant. No, because it's a risk we consistently face and because it's what we do. We capture our learnings in a variety of different ways. By the way, here's your hard hat, here's your vest. That was the line used on me at Southern California Edison when I was at their Mojave generating station. I found out the guys at the gate used that line basically 100 times a day. Anybody walking up to the gate, here's your hard hat, here's your vest. It was just part of the rite and ritual of working there. It was part of what made them risk special. These become the bricks and mortar of risk governance. These are the things that we do. And we do them over and over and over again. And with that, I want to hand you back to the fun folks, Raj and Anuj, from Whizlabs. They have a few minutes of just basically sharing with you what they do. But then we're going to do a couple of last questions, and we'll hit that in just a minute. But Raj and Anuj, I'll let you go ahead and take the floor back.
So, Carl, I think it's okay. I can take the floor back, after you're done. That's okay. You can continue.
Okay, cool beans. Yeah. In that case, you're going to send us. One question was, are you going to send the slide deck out to us? If anybody emails me, I'll be happy to. And just so you know, that's my email address. That's actually my cell phone number. Don't call it right now. I forgot to put it on mute. But yeah, that's my email address.
Carl, there's a question. There's actually a question coming from Jeff's side. So Jeff has a question. We picked quarterly releases just to be structured. We try to stay on time to set expectations. Yeah. So okay, I think I am kind of delayed.
Yeah, that was actually one that was already discussed.
Yes.
And Jeff, I got to tell you, if you just put it in the question box, I'll never remember to email it to you. Just pop me an email. Just say, Carl, slide deck, Whizlabs.
All right. So, guys, what's going to happen over here? As I mentioned in the, at the start of this session, so the recording of this session as well as the presentation would be shared with every one of you. So, whosoever has joined or was not able to join the session as well as, the recording as well as the presentation will be shared with you. So, don't worry.
Okay, and they actually unmuted you, so if you have any questions, you can go ahead and share away, I think. Oh, there's one. How do you make clients comply with their own gospel? You know, a lot of that is actually just a matter of awareness, making sure that they have, first off, that they know what their own gospel is. If they claim to be PMBOK compliant, you need to be the one who is sharing with them. Do you realize what PMBOK compliance means? Do you realize what ISO 21500 compliance is? You know, do you actually follow this? And sadly, a lot of clients don't even know. I loved one client who said, oh, yeah, we're ISO 215 compliant. And I said, really? How long have you been? Oh, we've been there for years. And I said, that's funny. It only came out in September of 2012. And they were like, oh, well, maybe I'm not sure what ISO 215 is. And it was kind of an alarming moment. So, you know, one of the best things you can do is actually be the one who actually reinterprets for them and becomes Noah Webster, if you will, for the stuff that they already have in place. Because if you clarify that for them, you're doing them a huge favor. Any other questions?
Right, I think there are none as of now. So what I can do is let me quickly take the access back. Thank you. Carl, that was really, really impressive, I would say. It was really impressive. Yeah, just one second, let me take the access back. Okay. So here you go. All right, guys. So first of all, let me, all right. So Whizlabs, as Carl has already mentioned, that we are PMI, REP, and we do online trainings, project management trainings, and we do it in the same mode as you've been seeing, this entire session. The best part is, we have kind of come up with a new, the new style of teaching. So as of now, what I've been seeing, this industry, there are 4-day sessions, 5 days crunching sessions. So what we have done is, every one of you is kind of very busy, and there's this evening slot where people would like to come back and rather than spending 4 to 5 big days into the sessions, into the workshops, where the courses is, it's been run from the start to the finish, and then there's kind of too much of information overloaded at the same time. So we have converted those 4 to 5 days into 1.5 hours of small modules. So Monday to Thursday, so the weekend are yours, the Friday evening are yours, Monday to Thursday, 1.5 hours in the evening. 7:30 to 9 is when we want to do these sessions for you. Slowly, small modules with, we teach you the specific topic, we do the exercises and the quiz then and there, and then we give you enough of time to practice. So every module comes up with a particular quiz also, and then there are lengthy full-length practice test of 200 questions for you to practice. So 1.5 hours, Monday to Thursday, 7:30 to 9 p.m. EST, 16 sessions covered in 4 weeks. It gives you 35 mandatory hours certificate. So Carl, first of all, I wanted to confirm if you can see my screen.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. And, you get a lot of study material along with it. The sessions, as these are recorded, so would they be. And these are all done at the comfort of your home. So, sit at your home and study from there. 1.5 hours every day, Monday to Thursday, 16 times in 1 month. And you are all through. And at the same time, there's a lot of post-training support also. So we keep on doing webinars. We do have discussion forums where you can come and, have your queries answered. At the same time, the trainer will also teach you, even, answer your queries even after the training is over. Now, the key, of this entire long chain of, long points of lengthy points where we are talking to you about, 1.5 hours, this and that. The 4 session, the initial 4 sessions are free. So just come, join, see for yourself if you know what we are seeing is what we need. And on the 4th session, if you feel that, okay, these guys are good and, I would like to continue my preparation with them, then you make the payment on the 4th day and, the next week onwards, you continue with the 5th and onward sessions. So as you can see, the date is also there in front of you. So the date is, we are starting this batch from the 26th of the coming month. 26th May to 19th of June is when we are going to do this. The same format as I have discussed with you right now. I am actually launching a poll in front of you. So you might be seeing a poll in front of your screen where you can pick one of it. You might also be seeing ACP, so that is purposely kept over there, the Agile certification preparation training. Why we have done it? Because this month we are running the course on this particular format. Otherwise we were running like full 4 days format of training, and we consciously want to move from this to the other format. So that is how we are doing it as of now. So any one of you who's interested in PMP or ACP, you can take one of the poll, and one of the executive would be actually following up with you and may help you to register for the training. So any questions, comments coming for me or for Carl, please let us know so that we can answer you. So if there is any last questions for either me or Carl, please let us know. Okay, so I still see that only 43% people have voted. There are others who still have to vote. So if you can vote, pick one of the choices. It's okay to choose not interested. Any which ways, it's kind of first 4 sessions are free. So all you have to do is come and see the first 4 sessions, and then if you're interested after the 4th session, you can make the payment and continue with the other sessions as well. Okay, so Brenda has a question. Do you offer PDU courses for people who have their PMP? Brenda, well, what we are doing is you can pick one of our product. Those are sufficient for you to gain your PDUs. So just to let everyone know the difference between a PDU and a contact hour, the PDU is earned post. Once a person is PMP certified, he or she holds a charter, then there's a requirement of 60 PDUs post a person is certified. Prior to it, there's a contact hour requirement which one can take by attending one of the REP's training. So I still see, there are a couple of people who have still not voted. Till the time everyone is voting, I would request if there are any last questions for either me or Carl, please do let us know so that we can answer your queries right now.
Also, you want to answer Pamela's question about whether the PDU for the webinar is going to be automatically applied.
Okay, so right now what we have done is we have not registered this activity. Carl, just to let you know as well, we have not registered this activity with PMI. Next time when you will attend the webinar, this activity will be registered with PMI, and you can definitely gain PDUs from these webinars. So what we have done is we have converted, so we were like a PMI REP, now we are a global REP of PMI. Okay, so I see there are no other questions. I would say thank you very much, all of you, for attending this session. It was really very, very informative. I personally felt it to be very informative, and I really liked it. There's a lot of things that I'm going to personally, apply to my own work. Thank you very much, Carl, for running such a brilliant session.
Well, thanks.
Okay, perfect. So in that case, what we're going to do is I'm going to end the session from here. and so guys, you're more than welcome to attend the next sessions of Whizlabs. You will in any case be receiving the presentation, the recording, and the invite for the next webinar. Thank you very much, and have a nice day. Take care.